Once upon a time, the world believed in heroes, not because they were real, but because we needed them to be. On comic book pages, in Saturday matinees, on screens both big and small, they stood as giants, guardians of hope, reflections of our best selves. But somewhere along the way, the myths grew heavy. The costumes became routine. The magic began to fade. And so the question is, do superheroes still matter? It's a question that feels heavier than it sounds, because for nearly a century, superheroes have been more than just stories. They've carried our hopes, our fears, our struggles, and our triumphs onto the biggest stages in the world. From the campy, colorful days when superheroes were simple entertainment to the darker, more complex eras that wrestled with real-world themes, they've always been there, always evolving, always mirroring the times. Think back to Christopher Reeve's Superman in 1978. A man in a cape and tights shouldn't have worked, but it did, because what people saw wasn't just a man flying. They saw hope. They saw a reminder that good could exist, even in a cynical world. Fast forward to 2019, Avengers Endgame, the culmination of over a decade of storytelling. Millions of people from every corner of the globe sat in theaters and cried, cheered, and stood together. In that moment, superheroes weren't fiction. They were family. They were us. But something changed. Somewhere along the way, the myths began to lose their meaning. At first, it was subtle. A sequel that felt more like a commercial than a story. A crossover that sacrificed character for setup. But then it snowballed. Every studio raced to build their own cinematic universe. Every release promising the next big thing. Movies stopped ending. They merely paused, like placeholders in an endless assembly line. The stories, once rich with symbols and lessons, became crowded with noise. Superheroes turned into products, each film a piece of a larger machine where spectacle overshadowed soul. The focus on universe building, on the endless race toward the next crossover event, stripped away the intimacy of character, the quiet beauty of story. Oversaturation dimmed the magic. What once felt rare, monumental, and unforgettable became routine. Another film, another sequel, another multiverse cameo. The extraordinary became ordinary, and in that shift, the sense of wonder evaporated. The hard was replaced by excess. Entire finales dissolved into weightless CGI sludge, where characters leapt through green screen backdrops that never felt real, where the battles meant little because the stakes were buried beneath layers of pixels. A hero's sacrifice no longer carried weight when it was drowned in noise and effects. Their struggles felt shallow when the heart of the narrative was traded for setups and teases of what's coming next. And audiences felt it. The fatigue set in. People who once lined up for midnight premieres stopped caring. The very phrase superhero movie, once enough to spark joy, became a punchline. Critics called them hollow. Fans called them lifeless. What was once myth, once cultural scripture, had become spectacle without soul. To understand if superheroes still matter today, we have to look back at why they mattered in the first place. Superheroes weren't born out of special effects or billion-dollar franchises. They were born out of need. In the late 1930s, the world was bruised. The Great Depression had shaken families. War loomed on the horizon. People were searching for something, anything, to believe in. And then came Superman. A hero who hid in plain sight, who was different, who was other, but who used his difference not as a curse, but as a gift. He wasn't just strong, he was good. And in a world that felt uncertain and cruel, Superman reminded people that goodness could win. That's why he mattered. Not because he could lift cars or leap tall buildings, but because he carried an idea that we could rise above the weight of the world. And then came others. Batman, in the shadow of Gotham, teaching us that even without powers, resilience, and will can turn pain into purpose. Wonder Woman, born during World War II, standing as a beacon of truth and compassion in a time defined by violence. These heroes weren't random. They were answers to questions the world was asking, questions about hope, justice, identity, equality. And as decades passed, the questions changed, and the heroes evolved with them. Spiderman wasn't created in the 40s. He came in the 60s, an era of social upheaval when young people felt misunderstood. Peter Parker wasn't rich or godlike or untouchable. He was broke, awkward, human. And yet, behind the mask, he became something greater. His story told every teenager, you matter, your choices matter, and with great power comes great responsibility. The X-Men? They weren't just a team of mutants. They were a reflection of anyone who's ever felt marginalized, feared, or cast aside. Civil rights, identity, belonging, those struggles were written into every page. And that's the key. Superheroes mattered because they weren't just fantasy. They were metaphors. They carried the weight of real struggles in fantastical forms. They gave us ways to see ourselves, even when the world wouldn't. They were modern mythology. Our generation's Hercules, our Odysseus, our legends around the fire. Stories we told not just to escape reality, but to understand it. That's why the recent decline stings so much. Because somewhere along the line, studios forgot that these weren't just characters to sell toys or universes to expand. They were vessels of meaning. And when that meaning is stripped away, all that's left is noise. Superheroes stopped feeling like legends and started feeling like marketing. And yet, myths never truly die. They only wait to be rediscovered. Enter 2025. A year that feels, against all odds, like a return to form. Superman, the Thunderbolts, the Fantastic Four. Each of these stories, in their own way, remembered what it means to be heroic. They reminded us that a hero's worth is not found in the punch, the blast, or the spectacle, but in the soul behind it. Superman's return was not just a display of strength, but of compassion, of legacy, of reminding us why the S has always meant hope. His story did not lean only on the grandness of his powers, but on the quiet weight of his choices. The choice to believe in humanity, even when humanity struggles to believe in itself. That is what has always made Superman resonate, not invulnerability, not flight, but the courage to keep standing for good when it would be easier to give up. The Thunderbolts brought something different, a reminder that heroes are not always born from purity or perfection. Sometimes they are scarred, sometimes they are broken, sometimes they are people who have stumbled, fallen, and done things they regret. And yet, they rise. They choose something better. The Thunderbolts reminded audiences that even the flawed have worth, that even the outcasts can carry the fire of heroism, that redemption is possible, and that family is not always the one you're born into. Sometimes it's the one you fight beside, the one you choose. And then there is the Fantastic Four, Marvel's first family, a team that, at their core, are not defined by their powers, but by their bond. For too long, superhero films leaned on scale, on escalation, on who could punch harder. But the Fantastic Four reminded us that heroism isn't only about saving the world. It's about the love that holds people together when the world threatens to tear them apart. Their story this year was a testament to unity, to family, to the idea that even in the face of cosmic chaos, what matters most is the person standing next to you and the love you refuse to let go of. These films pulled back the curtain on what had been lost. They understood that the myth matters not because of the explosions, but because of the lessons whispered through the spectacle. That being a hero is about standing together when it is easiest to fall apart. About kindness in a world that rewards cruelty. About family in a time when loneliness feels overwhelming. This is the heart that had been missing. This is the soul audiences had been yearning for. Because at their best, superheroes are not simply entertainment. They are cultural scripture they teach us. In colorful costumes and impossible battles, how to be better. They tell us that light has power over darkness, that even when the world feels cynical, broken, and unbearably heavy, there is still room for hope. They have always been a reflection of us, of the times we live in, and of the people we aspire to be. So the question remains, do superheroes still matter? In truth, they matter now more than ever, because in a world fractured by conflict, weighed down by division, and shadowed by despair, we need these myths. We need reminders that we are not alone. We need stories that show us the strength of unity, the beauty of compassion, the necessity of hope. We don't look up to Superman because he can fly. We look up to him because he chooses every day to use his strength for good. We don't follow the thunderbolts because they are powerful, but because they prove that broken people can still choose redemption. We don't love the Fantastic Four only because of their cosmic adventures, but because they remind us that family, in every sense of the word, can weather anything together. These stories matter because they whisper to us the same truth superheroes have always stood for, that even in the darkest times, there is a way forward, that even in the face of despair, hope is never lost. So yes, superheroes still matter, not because of the box office numbers, not because of the costumes or the spectacle, but because they remind us who we are and who we can be. That's why we need them most of all, not to show us gods, not to dazzle us with powers, but to remind us of ourselves, to remind us that even in our smallest moments, we can choose hope, we can choose love, we can choose to keep going. And in times like these, that choice, that belief, that light matters more than ever. If you made it this far, thank you. Do superheroes still matter? Drop your comments down below. And if you want to keep exploring these stories with me, hit subscribe. We've only just begun.